Guys, it's Sarah and I am here today to do a little thicker tutorial for you. So something that I really like to do with my thickers, especially when I am running out of certain letters that seem to be very popular and most commonly used, so we go through them really quickly, we tend to run out of them. And I have kind of figured out a couple of ways that I can manipulate my thickers to make them work for me and to create them into those letters that I would need. And I have had quite a few people ask if I can do like a tutorial type thing, like what do I commonly do for things like that. So that is what I'm here to show you today. So what I did was I just took a few things here that I can show you some of my most commonly used tricks. And some of them are just like so stupid easy. It took me way too long to figure it out. But you know, sometimes you just have to look at your things a little bit differently, and that can be hard to do. Sometimes you want to use them for what they're used for. But I'm going to show you a few ways to do that. So I will show you with these using my most common ones, and then I will show you some other thickers that I have that I can show you how to manipulate those certain types of thickers. And then at the end, I'll show you some examples of things that are really hard to manipulate and maybe can't be manipulated. So that plays a big factor too. It depends on what kind of thickers you're using. So for these, some of the easiest ones is, we tend to run out of like S's and O's and M's and A's, and I run out of N's actually quite often, so that's kind of interesting. But we'll start from here. So this one is a Q. The easiest thing that you can do with this is you can turn this into an O or a zero very easily. All you have to do is take your scissors and cut off the little tail for the Q, and you have an O. Sometimes you would have to I cut it off a little bit too much there, quite honestly, but you could kind of clean it up a little bit, but you just kind of go a little bit at an angle and just kind of shave it off. Now this is a foam thicker here, so this one was pretty easy to do. They're a little bit harder on chipboard because you really want to get that straight edge, but there you go. And now you have an O, or a zero if you need one. So there's that. That one's really easy, and I do that quite often. If I run out of O's, I can very easily grab a Q and just cut the little curly off of it, and then you have an O. For this one, this is a W. If you need an M, just turn it upside down, and you have an M. Like really, truly, it's that simple. I've done that quite a few times. Sometimes I run out of W's and I needed one, so I had an M and I just turned it upside down. These are very, very easy to do because they are very commonly, they look almost exactly the same up or down. Even if sometimes the W will be shorter in the middle or something, you can still turn it over and it'll still be an M. So that one's very easy as well. Same thing with this one. This is a U. If you need an N, just turn it over and you have an N. And if you don't like this part being longer, although that is kind of the shape of the thickers, so for this particular packet it would work just fine. But you can always just cut it off and make it even if you want to do that. That's not a problem. All right, another variation of that is using a V and turning it upside down, and you can create an A out of that. Now, normally you would need to have something here towards the middle. I have actually used upside down V's before and just kept it blank in the middle, and it still looked like an A, and you were able to read the word no problem. Everyone knew what it was. So I have done that before, but I tend to try to make sure I put something in the middle. So what I do is I try to find something else on the thicker packet that I can cut a little piece off to make an A. So for example, this is a bracket. So this is how it would have been on the thicker packet. So, doing that. I don't use those all that often. So what I would do here is I would just cut a little piece off the end and just try to make enough to be able to put in the center here. And you can, cut off more if you need to or whatever, or if you need it longer for whatever reason. This one's a little bit too long, so I would just cut off a little bit more. But just for this purpose here, like there, you have an A. And no problem. So that is another one of my favorite tricks. I've used that quite a bit. Just take an upside down V, turn it upside down, grab something else that can make a little notch in the middle, and you have an A. And one of my favorites that I've been doing a whole lot recently is I run out of S's all the time. All the time. My first name is Sarah. My last name is Swan. We use S's. Now, one way that I have realized that I can make an S is using a number 8. And I don't use numbers all that much, so this was pretty easy for me. But as I was looking at my things, I was kind of realizing like the shape here is there for the S. So, you know, coming here and going here and going here and going here, I just had to figure out how to make that prominent. So here's how you do that. I'm going to do it twice here so I can show you 2 different times, but like this is a number 8. So what I need is I need this part, this part, this part, this part. So I don't need this part and I don't need this part here. So that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to start by cutting right here in the center and trying to go along the line just like that. Just like that. And now I need this shorter so it has that gap for the S. So now it looks like this. And now I need to do that on the opposite side here. So I'm just going to turn it over and do the same thing. This time I'm going to be going along the top of the center and then creating the gap. And there you go, you have an S. That is one of my favorite tricks for doing this because I think S's get used so much in titles and things like that. So it's been one of my favorite tricks. So I'm gonna do the same thing for this one. This one is shaped a little bit differently, but it's the same concept. So I'm just gonna turn it on its side and I'm going to start here from the bottom. And then create the gap. This one isn't quite as neat. I would probably, you know, I would go back and make that a little bit neater, but you can do that after you make the initial cut. It's no problem. And there you have an S. So that is definitely one of my favorite new tricks that I have been using a lot lately, is creating S's out of 8s. And it has really helped me use my thickers in a better way, just, you know, getting more out of them. So these are some of my favorite ways that I manipulate my thicker. Some of them are as easy as turning them over. Some of them are easy as just, you know, cutting off one little piece, and some of it's piecing together and, you know, just cutting off what you don't need. And just taking a look at your thickers and seeing, you know, looking for those general shapes. So those are my most commonly used. So now I will show you some more specific ones. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some other things that I can do. So what I did was I went through some of my thickers that I have, you know, obviously there's not very many on here anymore, but some of these I can really use as examples to show you what I tend to do. So we are working with another foam thicker here. These are called Fitzgerald. And one of the ones that I really have done quite a few times is I've taken a B and I made it into a P. And sometimes, you know, you need P's and they're not there. I usually tend to have a good amount of B's. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the shape. So I have the downward here and then I have the one over here. All I have to do is cut off the bottom part. So I'm going to go ahead and try to make it as straight as possible. So I make a slit right there and then round this around here. And now I have a P. Easy peasy. That is one very easy way to do that. And that works with more like with the capital letters. Like it's harder to make a P or a B or whatever with the lowercase because it would just depend on which side it's on. It's a little bit tricky. But capital letters, easy peasy, just cut off the bottom part of the B and you have a P. Now, another one that I've used quite a bit is taking an X and making it into a Y. Now, this is very easy because you already have the Y in here. You just have to cut off one little tail of the X. So you're just going to cut off the bottom right-hand portion. And you do need to try to make this as even as possible so it's a nice straight line. And sometimes I've had to work at that, but just cut that little part off and you have a Y. It's not a perfect Y. It's probably not the same type of Y that goes with this, but it's good enough. Like everyone will look at that and know that it's a Y. So there is that one. And you can also make an E out of an F. This one's a little bit trickier because you have to piece it together, but I have an F here. And in order to make an E, all I need is this little piece right here. So you can go about this a couple different ways. One easy way for me is I would take one of these exclamation points here because I don't really use these and I would just add it down to the bottom. Now, is that perfect? No, it's not. I could cut off a little bit to make it more even as far as, you know, being comparable to the top. And even that's not, you know, perfect, but it looks like an E. So when someone's reading your title, I mean, if they're like, you know, with a magnifying glass dissecting your title, then, you know, they're not looking at your albums for the right reasons, right? But it's good enough. So like that looks like an E. You can also use, like, if you want to make it a little bit more even, since the exclamation points do have a certain shape, you can cut off a little piece of the hashtag or a little piece of the ampersand, something that's a little bit more straight. You could do that as well, but that would work too. So an F can easily be turned into an E. This works a lot better with the foam thickers versus the chipboard, because the chipboard, you're definitely going to see that gap, you know. The foam, you can kind of mash it together a little bit and it looks a little bit more attached, but it works. You can take a Z and make it into a 7 if you need to. This is also very easy because the 7 shape is already there. You just have to cut off the bottom part of the Z. So you would just make this as straight as possible. And there you have a 7. So that one is really easy as well. I haven't used that one quite as much because I tend to not really run out of numbers. So I don't use numbers all that much. But that is another thing that's very easy if you do use numbers a lot. Speaking of numbers, another easy way to make an E is if you have a 3 that is shaped like this. So it has, you know, that. If it's something that is shaped like this, that's, you can't even see that. Something that's shaped like that, that's not going to work. But if you have a 3 like this is very easy to just turn over upside down and make it an E. I've done this quite a few times. It really helps when you have multiples like that, so it all looks like it belongs and it goes together, but that looks like an E very easily. And I've used that quite a few times as well. So those are some examples of what I do for some of these types of letters. So let's go on to another packet and I'll show you some more examples. All right, so now I'm going to use these foam thickers here. These are called Adorn. These are one of my favorites as well because they're tall and skinny. And I have a couple examples that I can use in here too. One of the easiest ones is to look at some of your extras here and see how you can create letters using that. Easiest one for this one in particular is this little @ sign. So the little A with the circle around it. Just cut off the circle. And then you will have a lowercase a. Now, there are no lowercase letters in this thicker packet, but people don't know that. You're the only one who knows that. So all you have to do is just cut that off, make that an A, and you can use that if you need to. And yeah, it would probably be surrounded by uppercase letters, but who cares? Like, really, no one else will know but you. So that's not a big deal. Okay, so that was like kind of the easiest one. And then I can take an R and make it into a P. So I will take one of these R's here. And again, this is kind of like the B where it's very easy to just cut off one little piece and you can make it into a B, or I'm sorry, to a P. So you just cut off this one right here and you have a P. Very easy. Now, on the flip side of that, you can take a P and make it into an R. So just take a regular P, and then you'll have to find something long enough to make the R part here. And I've done this a few times too when I was just in a pinch. You could use the bottom part of a number 7 if you want to. I would probably use one of these little brackets here because I just don't tend to use these on my pages. So I would just, you know, cut off the curly part that I don't want. And then I would hold it up here and I would measure it. So I would stick it on, kind of mash it up against and see how long I need it to be. And then I would cut it. So I kind of like go this way and it needs to be just about that long, and then cut it right there. And then you piece it together and you have an R. So very easy to do, and you know, no question about what kind of letters those are, right? So that is another, you know, really, those are a couple easy things that you can do. Just, I really try to utilize the little extra pieces that you get because I just don't tend to use them, but you can cut them up and you can make them part of your alphabets if you need to. All right, so now I'm going to work with some chipboard here. Chipboard is very, very tricky to manipulate because they are harder to cut into, and when you do cut into them, it's very obvious that you have cut into them, especially if they have like a specific shape here. So these are a little bit harder to work with. I don't tend to manipulate these very often, but again, I would do something with the Q. I could cut off the little curly Q to make an O. I've done that before. Another one for this one in particular that's pretty easy is I would take a T, and you can easily make this into an L. And the way that I would do that is it's very easy because this one, you know, it's like a mirror image here. So I would take the T, turn it upside down, and look for the shape I need. So I would need this and this right here. I don't need this extra part on the left hand side. So what I would do is I would just take my scissors and I would cut off this part, and then you have an L. It's not perfect, again, but it works. And when someone is reading something and they know that that's going to be an L in the word because they know what the word is, it's just going to flow nicely and no one's going to really notice all that much. So that's an easy way to make an L out of a T if you really need one. And that's pretty much all I'm going to be able to do on this one, to be honest with you, because these are harder to manipulate. But yeah. All right, these right here are another little bit tricky because they have a very distinct design to them. There's different, there's a very certain shape to all of these. So for this one, some easy ones that you could do is you can easily take a P and you could turn it upside down and make it into a D. So it would go from like uppercase to lowercase. Again, it would be one of those things, but that is very, very easy to do. And as long as it looks good in your title and you don't care about the font case, then, that's very easy to do there. And then another one that I would do is I would take a G and I can make this into a C. And this one can be done usually pretty well with uppercase. Lowercase, obviously, it wouldn't work. But all you would need to do is just make sure you cut off the little pieces that make this into a G. And for this one in particular, I would only really cut off this little tail down here on the bottom because the rest of it looks like it belongs there. So I would just do that. And then to me, that looks like a C versus a G. It could still look a little bit like a G. So if maybe you didn't want all of that, you could cut off a little bit more just to make it look a little bit more like a C, maybe something like this. So that looks a little bit more like a C. It would just be your personal preference on what you would want your thickers to look like. But capitalized G's can easily be made into C's. You just have to cut off the little extra part there. All right, so now we're going to work with something like this. Now this one can get a little bit tricky as well because a lot of these have very distinct designs, but especially for this font, which is called Delight, I have used a certain trick in here that I have been loving. And the biggest one here is taking one of these Z's. Now these have a very distinct shape, as you can see. So it looks like a cursive Z. Now, I got into a situation where I needed an E and I didn't have one. And I was like, how in the world can I make an E? I could take a 3 and turn it upside down. It has that shape, but I didn't really like the way it looked in my title. So I didn't like that. And I really just wanted to try to get a lowercase e somehow. And I found it with the Z. The way that I found that is that, as you can see, this has this here and here, here, here. When I turn it over though, what I saw was an E just right here on the top part here. So this little circle and then down. I didn't need the little zigzag on the bottom. So what I did was I had it upside down and I cut it just along here. And then I had an E. Look at that. Doesn't that look like an E? And it looks, enough like an E that I don't have to worry about, people questioning what letter that is. It looks like an E. And it, like that, I'm not kidding you, was life-changing. I was able to get so much more out of my thickers. I think I used that 3 times at least because I've never used a Z. I don't ever really use that letter. So that was perfect. Again, you're not going to be able to do that with all thickers because not all of them have that type of shape. But for this one in particular, it was fantastic and I've used it a few times. Now, another one in here that is, again, very easy and commonly used is, take a W, make it an M, just there's an M, there you go. Very easy. The M's can do the same thing for the W's if you need it. It's a little bit different because it does have this little notch here, but I would just kind of, you know, cut that off a little bit. So there is that. And then you can also use a G and make it into an 8 if you need to. Now this one in particular, because I have the two little circles here, you know, not every G is going to be able to do that, but this one is enclosed right here. So I could very easily just turn this over and cut along here just to make it have a little bit more shape. I would cut it along the bottom here just to kind of round it out a little bit, and then put my little notches right here for the 8. And there you have an 8. It's not perfect, but again, it looks like an 8. So, and that was, I'm not gonna lie, that was a little bit sloppy just because I was trying to show you stuff. But if you took a little bit more time with it, it would, you know, look a lot neater and be better. But, you know, when you have it enclosed like that, it's easy to just, you know, do that to the other side, and then you have an 8 if you need one. So that is another thing. Those are a little bit more specific to this, you know, certain font here, but you know, it's something that I've used in the past. Another easy one for this font here is you can take a D and you can make this into an A. And the reason you can do that is because, as you can see, there is a little bit of a notch down here on the bottom. So I would just take my scissors and I would cut off most of the top part here for the D, and then you have an A. And it looks good enough, you know, like that definitely looks like an A. So that is another one that is really easy to do here. And A's I run out of constantly. As you can see, I don't even have any on this in particular package anymore, but very easy. Just take a lowercase d, cut off the top, and you have an A. All right, so now I'm going to show you a couple using these thickers here. I do not know the name of these thickers. I got them at TJ Maxx, I think, on clearance, and they didn't even have a label on them, so I'm not sure who designed these, but these are awesome, and I use them a lot. As you can see, these are all I have left. I had 2 packages. So a couple things in here that I have been able to figure out. Now, one of the ones that I have used recently, and it was really fantastic, was I used an A and I made it into an E. And the way that I was able to do that is, again, just looking at them in a different way. So this looks like an A here, but if you turn it over, it looks like an E to me. So with this right here, all I had to do is trim off the little top notch here, and then you have an E. And again, it's not perfect, and you could round it a little bit more. I am going a little bit fast just so I can make sure I show you guys everything, but that looks like an E, right? So with the shape of how these letters are, that just worked out really, really nicely. Another thing that you can easily do is you can take a J and make it into an I, and I've done this quite a few times as well, because you have, you know, the J with the top part here, and all you really have to do is just cut off the tail. And you can make it as long or as short as you need it, you know, to coincide with your other letters. But that's a very easy way to do that as well. Just take a J and make it into an I. And then you can also take, for this one, a P and make it into an R. Now I'm going to do this in lowercase this time. I've done it in uppercase before, but this time I can do it in lowercase. And what I am looking for is I'm looking for the shape of the R. So all I need to do is cut the bottom part of this loop off. So I cut right there. So now this is unattached, and then I'm just going to make it into an R. So I'm going to cut about halfway down, and there you have an R. And you would probably need to cut it a little bit low, you know, shorter as far as this goes, just to make it go with the rest of your alphabet, but that's very easy to do. So that is another nice little trick there. And then another one that I have discovered is using some of these extra pieces here again. Now I can take a bracket here and I can make this into an L or an I, because I have, you know, the straight edge that I need. So if I wanted to make it an L, I could just take it like this and cut off the bracket part of it to make it just one straight line down, and then it becomes an L. Very easy, or an uppercase I if you need that. Another thing that I can do with the brackets is I can do the same thing, but I can make it into an I instead. So I would just cut it shorter And then I could even use some of this to make the punctuation on top. Just cut off another little piece, and there you have your punctuation, and it's the same size and everything. So very easy to do, and then you have two little leftover pieces that you throw away. So very easy to manipulate those. With this one in particular, you could also take an exclamation point and turn it upside down and make it an I as well if you need to do that, if you don't want to use the exclamation points because they're small. So yeah, these were pretty easy, honestly, to manipulate because, you can just cut off little pieces here and there and make it what you need it. All right, guys, so now I'm going to show you some examples of some thickers and some letter stickers that are pretty hard, if not almost impossible to manipulate because not everything is going to, be so easy. So one example is these because these are, they have a very distinct shape, and when you cut into them, it's going to be really obvious that, you manipulated them or that you tried to. And yeah, so these types of stickers here probably wouldn't work all that well, except maybe like an N and a U, turning those over and doing that kind of thing, that could work. But everything else is, it would be very, very obvious that you had to do something to them. Another one is something like this because these have a border along them. It looks like a stitched border, as you can see. So if you cut into that, it's going to interrupt that design element, and it's really going to be obvious, that you did something like that. Another one are something like this because these are very big and blocky, and it's gonna just, be really hard to be able to do anything except maybe the O's and the Q's. You could probably easily, just snip those little pieces off, but everything else, these have such a distinct shape and size that it wouldn't be quite as easy. This one is kind of in the same vein. It has a very distinct shape and size. I did use the W and the M for this example here, so something like that would be easy, or a U and an N maybe. Like you could probably get away with using this as an N, but obviously this one wouldn't work because of the shape of it. And again, the Q into an O would work as well. You could do a T into an L, but it'd have to be like just the very, very simple type things with something like this, just because of the, the size and the shape of them. Speaking of shapes, there's pretty much no way you could manipulate these, honestly, unless you turn an E into a 3 or something like that, just because these are so incredibly detailed and they are really very distinct. So it would be hard to manipulate something like this for sure. And then my last example here is something like this because these are puffy stickers. So puffy stickers are a little bit harder to manipulate because when you cut into them, you're going to see that gap, and sometimes it's not going to stay puffy because, having them sealed and having that air, that little pocket of air in there is what keeps them puffy. And so these would be really hard to manipulate. I don't think you'd really be able to cut into them super successfully. So there is, examples like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope that that was helpful. I hope that it gave you guys some ideas or some different ways that you can use your thickers and look at your letter stickers in a different way. I know, these are examples of some that probably wouldn't work all that well, but a lot of them really would, especially the foam thickers are just really great to manipulate. They're so easy to just cut into, and you can, shape them how you need to, and they're so wonderful for that. Please let me know down below if you guys have any questions. Let me know if you guys have any tips or tricks for other people as well, as far as how you can use your thickers in a different way. And I just really hope that was helpful for you guys. All right, I will talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day. Bye.